Hello everyone, I'm the Weather Dude. Welcome back, and today we are going to be talking about Tropical Storm Fred that has recently redeveloped. It was a depression, then remnants, and has redeveloped into a tropical storm over the open waters of the Gulf of Mexico. So we're going to talk about it today, where it's going to go now, and the latest updates that just came in from 11 a.m., how strong it could potentially get as well. Rainfall totals, wind, everything covered today. Before I start, however, be sure to everyone drop a like on the video and subscribe so this video can reach more people that could be in the path of Fred. And we're not talking about just the coastline, we're talking about inland places as well, so people definitely will need to see this video. So be sure to like and subscribe, that does help out a lot, and we're going to get started. So 11 a.m. update, Tropical Storm Fred has redeveloped. Now, the 8 a.m. update, it was still remnants, but it actually did reacquire 40-mile-an-hour winds. It just wasn't organized enough to be considered a tropical storm. Now, for the 11 o'clock advisory, we saw the organization come to a point where, yes, we can rename it a tropical storm. And this teal region is where those tropical storm force winds are located. Matter of fact, as I'm going to show you a little bit later in the video, so stay tuned. Hurricane hunters are flying through right now. They could be getting data for the 2 p.m. update, but they've been in there since before 11 a.m., so maybe another flight will come out for that. But here is the track. Latest track brings a little bit further west and making landfall on the western Florida panhandle. So Alabama, Florida, Georgia, you guys are all in the cone. Mississippi and Louisiana did used to be in the cone. You could still see some gusty winds. I don't think you're going to be seeing too much impacts in the form of liquid precipitation, though. I think that'll be pretty limited. But there is an area over the central Gulf where the heat content, as I mentioned in the last video, where the ocean heat content is insanely high. And if it were to go near that or over it, we could see some, not rapid strengthening, but maybe some more strengthening than anticipated. And waters and the sea surface temperatures are also pretty warm. So we'll see if it goes west enough to get near that, but it is now moving north-northwest. All right, and maybe it'll start to turn in a more northwesterly direction. Pressure is 1,008, although, as I'll show you later, spoiler alert, but hurricane hunters did find pressures of 1,007, so a tad bit lower. But as we track this north, it could strengthen to where 8 p.m. tonight they're forecasting a 45-mile-per-hour tropical storm, then maybe a 50-mile-an-hour storm as we head towards 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, and then a 50-mile-an-hour storm at landfall, although the center by that point would be over land. So maybe anywhere between 50 and 60 mile an hour winds, sustained winds at landfall. All right, and we have our landfall spot right there, right between Pensacola and Tallahassee, so just east of Pensacola, where tropical storm watches are in effect. And then anywhere from the center landfall point eastbound, so Panama City, south of Tallahassee, right around the Big Bend region, we have tropical storm warnings, we have storm surge warnings. You might be thinking, well, Pensacola is in the cone, the center's right there. Why are they not under tropical storm warnings? Well, I mean, they could be changed to warnings, but most likely reason is because this is going to be like Elsa, an east side loaded system. So places outside the cone to the east have tropical storm warnings and storm surge warnings, yet to the west, there's only tropical storm watches, even though you're technically in the cone. So this is going to be more of an eastern loaded system. We'll see if that will change. But still maintaining a tropical depression, 35-mile-an-hour winds, sustained winds. Gusts could be higher than that through Montgomery and Birmingham. Then it will probably weaken a lot more as it moves north from there. But still, a lot of rainfall is forecast for the Carolinas, especially the mountainous terrain areas. So we'll be watching that as well. Tropical storm force wind probabilities are going up, and they're surpassing 50% now for the chance of tropical storm force winds, which is probably why they issued the warnings, because chances have been increasing. Earliest reasonable arrival time to expect them would be Monday morning. That's the time, like early Monday morning, like before the rooster crows, would be the earliest reasonable time to expect it for the Gulf Coast, whether that be eastern Mississippi, Alabama, and the Florida coastline, if you were to see those winds. All right. Now, the most likely arrival time will be between breakfast and lunch. So, like, if you were having like brunch, or for example, like around 10 a.m. So that'd be like 8 to 10 would be the most likely arrival time, but just know that they can arrive earlier, they can arrive later. So be prepared by the earliest reasonable time, which is like really early Monday. So Sunday night, have those preparations done, have your plan in place, because a lot of impacts are still going to be in play here, even though it's probably not going to be a hurricane. But notice this, the probability of winds of 58 are rounded up to 60 miles an hour, all right? Because winds of 58 miles an hour will be rounded up to 60 on the NHC cone. Chances have increased now to 20 to 30% chance. We've been seeing higher chances of reaching closer to that 60 mile an hour range. Still no probability of a hurricane force wind. So hurricane, I can't say it's off the table. I can't say that, but very, very low chance. Pretty much a minimal chance of a hurricane. Flash flooding risk from the Weather Prediction Center, definitely a slight risk. But notice, it's not just the coastline. It goes all the way up to Virginia, the Carolinas, Georgia's included, and probably north from there as well into parts of the northeast eventually. All right. Rainfall totals, so at the coastline, 4 to 6, even near Apalachicola, maybe even 6 to 10 inches. All right. Then it could track inland. So Montgomery, Atlanta, still 2 to 4 inches. And if it falls in a short amount of time, that's going to be very heavy rainfall. And even in the mountainous terrain here, 4 to 6 inches of rainfall with spotty areas getting over 6. That's still a ton of rain. Notice, this is the landfall point right about here. Notice west of center, there's really no rainfall. It's all to the east. Or, I mean, right on the center and points east from there. So do keep that in mind. But parts of, like, even Orlando and Tampa, if you get a brief rain band from this, could dump another inch plus of rain. So definitely be on the lookout there for some more rain. Storm surge. This morning, the entire coastline of Florida, or at least the entire, Gulf Coast area, was around 1 to 3 feet. Latest update now for the Big Bend between Indian Pass and the Steinhatchee River, 2 to 4 feet now. So right in the Big Bend region, 2 to 4 feet of surge is expected. Wouldn't be surprised if maybe we'll get a 3 to 5 foot layer added. Wouldn't be surprised, but most areas will be 1 to 3. But just east of Indian Pass, you could see 2 to 4 feet of water level rise, and that's peak surge. So that's if it happens around high tide. I just want to keep that in mind. I just want to put that out there. If the strongest winds happen at high tide. Storm surge warnings for the Big Bend area of Florida are also in effect. We could see watches added soon, maybe for like areas like Panama City, because you are east of center. So we'll be looking out for some alerts there. Heavy rainfall, aerial, urban, small stream, and river flooding, all types of flooding are in play. We could see dangerous storm surge inundation. Storm surge warnings have been issued for that. And tropical storm conditions are expected in the warning areas beginning on Monday. Probably around, again, the morning time frame. Whether it's early morning or later in the morning will depend on how fast the storm moves. So 40 mile an hour winds, 35 knots. Pressures, they found 1,008 millibars. But notice, however, the radius of maximum wind has really grown. I mean, you can see this is a still satellite image. Again, we'll get a loop coming in here, like in the next frame here. But it's really grown. These thunderstorms have grown really large, and they've been accompanied by some strong winds. So that radius of maximum wind, and again, you can see, if you look down here, you can see it's on the northeast side, or east side, 70 nautical miles from center. So that's about 75 to 85 miles away. So we got a growing radius of tropical storm force winds, or those maximum winds, which are tropical storm force. So let's look at this on satellite. Looks a lot better than it used to. Earlier this morning, you can see the center better. I actually have a visible loop, so you'll be able to see the center a lot better. But it's definitely there. I can't say it's the best looking, but it's definitely getting there. It's definitely an improvement. A lot of thunderstorms on the east side. Hurricane hunters are flying down there. I got updated maps coming for those. But because of the little bit of shear that we have, we still have a little bit of shear blowing the storms off to the east a little bit. That's allowed for some storms to make their way onto the west coast of Florida a bit more. But notice that upper level low that you see right here is pretty much getting whisked away. So wind shear should start coming down a little bit from here on out. And we'll see over these warm waters how fast or how much it could strengthen. So here's the visible satellite loop. I mean, and you can really see the center by that point. It's sitting right there. I'll actually go to the last frame. I'll stop it right there on the last frame. I mean, you can see right there, that little round area, that is the storm center. It's around 85 degrees west, 26 degrees north. And you can see the thunderstorms that are east and northeast of center as well. So in the visible loop, you can see it a lot better. Definitely a lot of thunderstorm coverage. It's definitely, you can definitely see a rotation, and then there's the immediate low center right there. So definitely looking a lot better for sure. Now here is the Hurricane Hunters. Now this was as of 11:21 a.m. I will refresh it so we can get a comparison sake, but I wanted to show you the screenshot first before I refresh it in case some data happens to go away. So as of 11:21, the Hurricane Hunters are right here. So they should be making a third pass into the strongest areas of the system. Now what I did notice, now they're flying right now at around between 700 and 800 millibars. So more closer to 800 millibars. So in terms of, that's like geopotential height. So they're flying at about 6,500-ish feet, maybe closer to 7,000. So do keep in mind, these winds are flight level winds. They have picked up winds of 45 to even as much as 55 knots, which is about 50 to 60 miles an hour. Now, again, they're not surface winds, but do note that typically flight level winds can translate themselves to the surface. We talk about that with severe weather, right? Like the winds up in the atmosphere can translate to the surface. And again, there's that pressure reading of 1,007 they found. So let's give a little refresh here. So there's our third pass that they're making here. Let's actually zoom in a bit more. There we go. So there's the third pass. They're going north like this, and they're finding similar winds, again, between 45 to 50 knots. And now remember, again, this is like 7,000-ish feet. All right. So here's a screenshot. This is also from 11:21. I'm going to refresh it after I go over this first. You can see 35 knots right here. That's the 40-mile-an-hour wind reading that they picked up. There's the pressure falling around 1,008. They're actually, it's gone now because I was refreshing it earlier. But there was a 1,007 millibar reading earlier. All right, and in terms of aircraft pressure, or excuse me, the altitude, you can see this is the geopotential height. These are like the millibars, right? So you have 750 millibars, right? So it's been flying, or here's the pressure over here, I'm sorry. So they've been flying pretty high up in the atmosphere. And notice the temperature and the dew point also close together, which is what you want to see with a tropical system. Now, refreshing it, so they haven't found much more winds. They've been finding some more lighter winds. But again, there's your pressure reading right there. So they did find earlier that 40-mile-an-hour wind reading, but they're flying through it still, trying to get some more data in on it. So let's look at some of the model tracking guidance, and we'll get to some of the models. So now we're going to be looking at more mesoscale models because we're getting closer to landfall. They agree on a landfall spot, all right, and pretty much agreeing on where it's going to go from there. Probably through the Ohio Valley, maybe even the Northeast in the near future, in the next few days. But notice this, though. I want you to look at the GEFS model tracks. Now, I usually say, don't really look at the track, or don't look at the intensity, focus on the track. Well, now that we're closer to landfall point, because GEFS isn't like as good, at least these model tracks are not as good long term. Short term for intensity, they're okay. But notice this, right? We have pressures between like over 1,010. Actually, it's 1,008 right now. So this was from 6Z this morning. But notice what happens though. Look how pressure right before landfall, we get to the northern Gulf area. Pressure goes between 1,000 and 1,005 millibars, and a couple of models inside of here actually have pressure going below 1,000 millibars. So between 990 and 1,005 millibars is the expected pressure. So this could be a more bona fide system. Right now, GEPS, this is from 0Z. Right, you can see again quite a few models go below 1,000 millibars of pressure, and a couple even go below 990, which I think that's a little much. But I mean, if it hits the right area, if wind shear goes down, the upper level low continues to get whisked away, we see shear calm down, the water can stay warm. I mean, it can happen. Intensity guidance, forecasting 40 knots, about 45, as much as 50 knots. So maybe 45 to 55-mile-an-hour winds, maybe 60 is probably the max as of right now. And then once it hits landfall point, of course, it's going to weaken to below tropical storm status. All right, so let's look now at the high resolution model. This is the 12Z. Now, I would go to like the newer ones. They have the 14 and probably 15 and 16Z coming out soon. But those only go out 18 hours. This goes out 48 hours, so which is why I want to look at the 12Z run. So let's look at it here. Now, pressures of 1,011, those have been dropping, so we're actually ahead of pace in terms of storm strength. But notice what happens. It's like I've seen a pattern with these models, right? Once it hits the central Gulf, it's like a sweet spot. Notice how it's 1,007, right? Look what happens when it gets to the northern Gulf now. All right, this is by Monday morning. We're at 999 millibars of pressure. All right, we got a decent easterly band, one here and one kind of wrapping around the system. So that's pretty interesting, right? Good storm structure. And even some convection on the northwestern side, which is also interesting. And a landfall with about 997 millibars of pressure here near the Big Bend. So the high resolution model is showing a pretty good storm in terms of intensity, in terms of rain bands. And look at this, pressure even remains below 1,010, even well inland in Alabama and Georgia. And we'll see it had some moisture over there for the mid-Atlantic as well. But moisture with Fred is still at the southeast. This is by Tuesday morning, and then that's where it ends. So let's look at the NAM 3 km now. Now, they had by 11 a.m., they have a 1,005 millibar system. So we're at 11 a.m., we had 1,007. So a little bit behind pace if we're talking about the NAM model. But they do forecast a pretty strong system. Like, look at this, 996 as it hits the Central Gulf. Is that a little much? I think so. I don't think it's going to strengthen that fast. They actually forecast a 988 millibar system over the Northern Gulf. I can't say rapid intensification is not possible, but I will say it is not likely. That's not to say it can't happen, but it's not likely because they actually call for a 970 millibar. That's probably like a hurricane, like a Cat 1 on landfall in the Florida Panhandle. So maybe not that strong. Now, the NAM 12 km, I definitely agree with a bit more than the 3 km. So let's look at that one. So Central Gulf, right, you can see the low starting to drop a little bit. 1,004 millibars of pressure. And again, you have that convection that's on the northeast and east side, right? It's more of an east side loaded system. And then as it moves to the north, could get as low as 1,000 millibars of pressure. And then we got the convection on the northern side of that. I think that's a bit more accurate. I think that's good for the pressure. And then tracking up through the mountains of the Smoky Mountains, Tennessee, North Carolina, and we could see some enhanced moisture for those areas. And our last model, the good old GFS, right? I decided to pick one global model. And they actually have pressure going down to 1,003 millibars and some decent convection on the northern side. And then that moisture will get flung into the Ohio Valley, maybe over the mid-Atlantic as we head towards Wednesday and Thursday timeframe. But just know a lot of rainfall is expected for the southeast. So if it's not the wind, it's going to be the rain. And at the coast, definitely focus on the surge and the rain as well. So remember, most of the hurricane deaths occur by water, whether that's from rainfall or surge. So rainfall or water in general is very dangerous for a tropical system. So thank you guys for watching. Invest 96L video coming out as well. So be sure to tune in for that one. I am the Weather Dude signing off. Till next time, I will catch you guys in the next video.